So in chapter 4, we talk about step 3 of the process, which is how to identify two policy options in addition to the status quo. So keep in mind, you always have that first policy option, the status quo. That is the current policy, and that means no additional action. And in reality, that is the most common policy that policymakers decide to take in the end. It's really hard to change policy, so policymakers are only going to roll their dice if there's a really strong case for a particular policy option. Now, in developing your policy option, you're going to want to collect information from a variety of different sources. The first option is to just go to Google News and type in whatever your topic is. Like in our case, it's issues related to food insecurity for women with infants and children. And you'll see that people will have proposed all sorts of interesting ideas. So one problem in the Women and Infants with Children program is that 40% of the women who are eligible for the program do not participate. And there's all sorts of reasons that this occurs. Some of it is related to the need for women to physically go into the office, which is challenging if you're a woman with small infants and children. Some of it is language barriers, because maybe they do not speak English as their first language, and so there's nobody for whom to communicate. And other times it's because they just can't afford to take time off work to go to an office on a 9-to-5 basis, which is typically when offices are open on weekdays. So we can get a better understanding of the problems and propose solutions for those problems by just looking through Google News and seeing what people say. Because oftentimes reporters and others will talk to whoever is having the challenge. They'll talk to the people administering the program, and they'll collect some of that information, and that will give you a good idea of what the stakeholders in the problem think. Now, once you have a better understanding of what the stakeholders think are the problems and possible options to respond to that problem, you want to go and seek what policymakers in other jurisdictions have done to respond to that problem. So if you're looking at a national problem, you're going to want to look to see what people are doing in other countries. If you're at the state level, you're going to want to see what people are doing in other states. And even further, you might want to focus on states that are in your region. So I do a lot of work in West Virginia, for example, and it's important to focus on other states in Appalachia rather than focusing on, for example, California. There's not much similarity between California and West Virginia. So saying something that works in California will work in West Virginia doesn't make sense to you, and it doesn't make sense to the policymaker. So what you really want to do is focus on other places that are like your geographic region and see what actions they have taken to respond to this challenge. Now, some of those problems may have worked, some of them may not have worked, but using that information, you can decide whether or not to propose it for one of the two policy options that you'll take a look at. So the last option is to look for out-of-the-box ideas, things that are totally different than what you might have thought of already and that other people might have thought of. There, you're best in a room with a bunch of colleagues, going through a list of options and just trying to come up with unique ideas to respond to that problem. So in our example of the Women with Infants and Children program, or the WIC program, there's two options that have come up on a regular basis. One is to offer the ability to apply for services online and not require women to go physically into an office. The second option is to make it easier for women to get to the office by providing transportation services. So right now, particularly in, say, a rural community, it might be very challenging to actually physically get to an office when there might only be a few in the state. So an option is to provide them with vouchers to allow them to make it easier to get to an office. So those are the two options, in addition to the status quo, that we'll be taking forward for our next steps in the analysis.